My presentation focuses on whether or not organic certification schemes are a viable solution for small-scale producers of coffee facing risks, specifically environmental risks. And the reason they face so much risk is because the coffee market is very volatile. Some of the factors contributing to volatility in coffee prices include variable weather, volatility in currency markets, and in political conditions. The global market price, called the C price, is established in a futures market in New York. A futures market works by establishing a future price in advance, and by setting this price in advance, the futures market is supposed to transfer some of the risk from the producers to the consumers. The decision is supposed to be made between the buyer and the seller, but given the degree to which intermediaries are involved in the international coffee trade, the decision is hardly ever made between the coffee producer, meaning the farmer, and the international buyer. The general risks associated with coffee production are compounded by climate change. Climate change increases the risk associated with coffee production in a variety of ways. Firstly, rising temperatures contribute to increased incidences and severity of droughts, as well as to increased incidences and severity of floods in coastal regions. Moreover, rising temperatures allow for vectors of diseases, or for the diseases themselves, in the case of coffee rust, to thrive at higher altitudes and latitudes. In fact, in 2014, the IPCC predicted a potential reduction in the area suitable for coffee production, and in some areas of Central America, this estimated loss was as great as 89%, an 89% reduction in suitable land, because the minimum altitude for coffee production would have to rise from 2,000 to like 3,300 feet due to rising temperatures. So in response to this risk, small-scale farmers have fewer options at their disposal than large-scale coffee plantations. And according to one study by Barham and Weber, small-scale farmers are more likely to lose their homes or to have to pull their children out of school, which perpetuates cycles of poverty. One proposed solution to mitigate the risk that small-scale coffee producers face is organic certifications and fair trade certifications as well, but I focus on organic certifications to look at the environmental impacts, and I include fair trade on the handout just because they have a lot of the same downfalls. So organic certifications are championed as a means of boosting smallholders' income while minimizing environmental externalities. However, the organic certification process is often lengthy and expensive, effectively barring those who might benefit the most. The two main organic certifications are UTZ and Rainforest Alliance, and they're supposed to reward producers for taking into account social and environmental externalities of the coffee production process. One of my main questions is whether or not the premium that consumers pay to reward these producers acts as a double dividend of sorts, in that it reduces environmental degradation while redistributing revenue to the producers that might be incurring a short-term loss as they adjust to more sustainable practices. Apart from the premium, there are several benefits associated with organic certification, and I'm going to outline them right now. So looking at Rainforest Alliance, for example, their certification standards are based on the standards established by the Sustainable Agriculture Network, and this includes social standards such as living wages and preventing child labor, and environmental standards that promote climate-smart agricultural practices that emphasize water use efficiency and soil conservation. They also prohibit the conversion of ecosystems that have been deemed to be of high conservation value. And all of these practices are meant to minimize greenhouse gas emissions and other environmentally damaging practices from agriculture. Now, the part that's questionable, but the other intended aim of these practices is to make producers more resilient to climate variability. One of the other benefits of organic certification schemes is that producers are exposed to a broader international consumer base, and they're exposed to more information because the certification process relies on exchanging information about best practices for production. Now, all this being said, it's still questionable whether or not small-scale producers would choose to enter into organic certification schemes because some of the downfalls associated with the process. Small-scale producers that rely solely on coffee sales are more likely to have a higher discount rate, which decreases their likelihood to make a change that would reduce profits in the short term. Especially given the coffee rust epidemic that Latin America is currently facing, some small-scale producers might not feel like the present value of the future benefit they will receive from switching to organic practices is enough to outweigh the immediate costs. The table on the handout underneath the certifications compares the profits of conventional producers with those of organic producers in Mexico and Costa Rica. And this study found that yields were between 22 and 28% lower for organic producers than for conventional producers, and that their production costs were between 5 and 7% higher. So transitioning to the general problems associated with organic certification schemes, as we just saw with that study, certification schemes involve higher costs of production, and the certification itself can be costly and can be a barrier to entry for small-scale producers who can't afford it. In fact, most of the small-scale producers who are certified in some way are certified through a cooperative that pays for it. Also, the demand for organic and fair trade coffee is relatively small. At the moment, there's not enough market demand for organic and fair trade certified producers such that a producer could sell all of their product under that fair trade label and receive a premium for all of their product unless they had some sort of long-standing relationship. And this kind of raises a question about how beneficial it is to positively value environmental and social externalities rather than, and by that I mean like why do we reward small-scale producers rather than taxing large-scale coffee producers that are causing more damage environmentally? Moreover, going back to the premium paid by the consumer is often filtered through so many intermediaries that the producer only gets a small portion. Furthermore, some of the standards, such as retrogradedly prohibiting the conversion of natural ecosystems after 2014 and of valuable ecosystems after 2005, those are both standards under the Rainforest Alliance. These standards unfairly punish producers for a sunk cost. It would be more effective to prohibit conversion of natural ecosystems from the moment the certification process began and to incentivize producers to restore land that had already been damaged. So one study conducted in northern Nicaragua in the early 2000s found that certification had a greater influence on price than altitude did. And this is significant because higher altitude coffee is typically thought to be of a higher quality. This same study, however, found that even after receiving the premium for organic and fair trade certification, the additional income is not enough to offset the risks posed by climatic and price volatility in the international coffee market. And this is a study done by Christopher Bacon in 2005. A different study conducted by Bochelt and Zeller in Nicaragua as well found that farmers with fair trade and organic certifications more likely than conventional growers to be in poverty in the years after the 2000 to 2003 coffee price crisis. And this same paper conducts a review of the studies that have been done on the impacts of fair trade and organic certification. And they found that farms that attained increased revenues after certification got the increase in revenue due to increased yields rather than higher prices associated with quality. And they mentioned that this might be because the certification process is self-selecting and that better performing farmers tend to enter into fair trade and organic certifications. And if this turns out to be true on a broader scale, then certification schemes are not an effective risk mitigation scheme for the lower yielding small-scale producers who need it the most. So this all goes to say that it's unclear if organic practices and certification can increase future income sufficiently to justify the costs associated with switching to sustainable processes. I think that the most beneficial change that could be made to certification schemes would be to allow for more flexibility with regards to certain environmentally damaging practices, like mentioned above, rather than restricting ecosystem conversion after 2014, just restricting it from the moment that the certification process starts. Also allowing for more flexibility with pesticide use, especially given the coffee rust epidemic right now, because as I might have mentioned earlier, pesticides are the most cost-effective ways of addressing coffee rust. And currently, I think the standards are so stringent that they limit the amount of participation in these certification programs. And if there was a broader degree of participation, more producers would have access to information on environmentally sound production processes.